Welcome to Trigger Proof with Mikki Bey, the podcast that helps you stop reacting and start responding. I'm your host, Mikki Bey, emotional regulation coach, speaker, and guide. Each week, we'll explore real stories, practical tools, and conversations that will help you stay calm, confident, and in control, no matter what life throws your way. Let's get started. Welcome back to Trigger Proof. And today I have a very special treat for you, especially for the men out there. I know we have a couple of male viewers, so this is going to be a very informative, entertaining, and I would say for me, it was so eye-opening as a woman to have this conversation. Full transparency, we tried to have this conversation once before, and the interwebs and the weather in Atlanta would not allow it, so we got cut short. But here we are for take two. And I know it's going to be even better and more insightful this time around. So welcome, Mike Elliott. How are you today?
Yeah, Mikki Bey, stoked to be here, doing so good. Looking forward to this conversation again.
Yes, again. So first, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm a relationship expert and a men's coach. That's my title. I support mostly men now in the work that I do, and that's my title.
Okay, love it. And how did you get into this work?
That's the area that I have sucked the most. It's the place I have struggled the most in my life is how to be. Can I swear on the podcast?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I
Be
do
a
it all.
fucking man. No one taught me how to be a fucking man, and it's been hard. It's been fucking hard. And it created a mess in so many different areas. I was adopted twice in the first year of my life, separated from my mother day one, separated from my biological grandmother at 14 months. And so we have enough study and research in today's world of how important attachment is. Severed twice. It fucked me up. It created this perspective of reality for me that I didn't understand, that was very limiting. Walking around with this inner story of I don't belong, I'm not good enough, and I'll never be good enough. I'll never be lovable. And that was unconscious. I wasn't choosing it. And so I'd go out into life and I would attract amazing human beings and I would run from them because I was just unconsciously afraid I would lose it. So I would leave because at least I had control. And this pattern played out again and again. It led to me being a very angry, isolated kid in high school. I started self-soothing with pornography and drugs. I was kicked out of my house on the day of grad. And then I became a drug dealer and a debt collector. And what really started to get interesting is my life got darker and darker because I started to feed the sense of domination and power over to compensate for the level of insecurity inside of me. And so drug dealing was a very invigorating experience of now I'm just going to work out every day. And I used to wake up with the mantra of men will fear me, women will want me. Yeah.
Oh, say that again, Mike.
Men will fear me and women will want me.
Men will fear me and women will want me. And this was your conscious mantra when you were drug dealing.
That was my conscious mantra that I woke up with every day, because when I got kicked out of my house on grad, I had no idea how to be an adult. And it was so terrifying to try to figure out, how do I manage money? What do I do for home? I lived in my 1984 Civic for a couple weeks until a buddy's mom brought me in. And I just had no idea. So I remember actually, it was a mushroom trip that I had. And I remember staring at myself in the mirror, and I just looked like my head grew horns, and I had this fierce looking primal experience of myself. I looked like a lizard or something. I'm a big jacked up dinosaur. And I looked, and it felt good to feel that powerful. And somehow it informed the shadow part of me of, I will just use control then. This whole being weak and not, I'm going to take control. And I felt in control when I would work out and get stronger. When I would walk around just pissed off, I seemed to earn a different experience of respect, but it was out of fear and domination. And I liked it. And then women found it sexy. Any women with daddy issues all of a sudden now want to be with me because you're this tough, not soft, guy, and it worked, but I didn't understand it was all stemming from deep insecurity, deep fear.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. So I'm from Detroit. So I have dated and met my fair share of street pharmacists. So I definitely understand you there. But I think what really struck me is how conscious you were even in the moment. I think it's interesting when we can go back and we can look at it in retrospect and hindsight and say what we were thinking. But you were in the moment and you were able to actually say, I want to be feared and I want to be desired, right? By literally both sexes, that one was out of fear and respect and the other was out of lust and desire for protection and provision, which is very natural, but it was just coming from lack and fear versus the healthier side of it. So, what was the breaking point for you in your life? What was, because how do you get me from being a drug dealer and and doing all these seedy underworld things to where you are now helping men on their path?
Yeah, there's two breaking points for me. I'm a slow learner, so it took two. First one was when I was a debt collector drug dealer. There was a local crack dealer that heard some rumor that I had slept with his girlfriend, which wasn't true. So I went to the crack den above this Chinese food restaurant and I confronted him, and he was all jacked up on drugs. And he closed the door, and I went to confront him just to say, "What's, man, I've heard you're freaking out and you're going to kill me. I'm here. Look into my eyes. I didn't sleep with your girlfriend." And then he pulled out the sawed-off shotgun and he put it to my chest and he started jacking rounds out, screaming at me. And I just looked him in the eyes and I said, "Do it." Part of me wanted him to, because I was so lost inside. I was done. I was just done being so afraid, so lost and confused, and using the other way of I'm going to use power wasn't working. It was getting worse. So then I thought, fuck it. And he didn't. He dropped the gun. He put it down. He's like, "Oh, we're best friends." And then we smoked crack out of a bong together. It's just not a highlight of my moment of my life. Nice.
Wow. No, thank you for saying that though, because as an emotional regulation coach myself, I always tell people do not judge the vice because people are just doing what they know to do to survive and to feel some sense of relief. I come from two drug addict parents. Both of my parents are dead
Mm,
today due to health issues that resulted from their drug use, right? So I know that you can be a good person who has a lot of trauma, who the best way you found was through heroin or through crack or through alcohol or through sex or through pornography or whatever. So I always am very clear with people when you want to have that judgment about what someone is doing when they're in the depths of their pain is look at yourself. What do you do? For me, it was food. I was 125 pounds more than I am now for 2 decades of my life. And so I turned to food. I turned to fried chicken, which on the surface looks like it's maybe
mm.
better than smoking crack, but it's the same thing.
It's
It's the same thing. And so I always am so honored when people come on this podcast and talk about that because there is this shame that I think we collectively agree to around drug use, but not the other things. And my job as an emotional regulation coach is to say, you know what? Your thing just wasn't a chemical dependency, but rest assured it was a dependency. And I remember a real quick story. My mother, who suffered with alcohol addiction and cocaine, I remember asking her once I had an awareness of what addiction was, and maybe I was in my early 20s. And I remember asking her if my grandmother, who drank every single day of my life, was an alcoholic because she didn't act badly. So I was like, she doesn't act badly. So is she an alcoholic? And my mother said, it's not about your behavior, it's about dependency. Can you not do it? And I learned something that day. So, all in all, point is, with this conversation is that people are doing something to self-soothe. So you're in this crack den. You done made friends with the guy who wanted to kill you over sleep with the girlfriend you did not sleep with. And so get me out of the crack den, smoking the crack to helping the men. So how did you make that huge quantum leap?
The shift for me was pretty quick. The next day I woke up from that because my relationship to crack was short. It was a couple weeks. And that day that happened, I got something that's called a ringer. And I didn't know what it was, but my ears just like, "Bird," and it was frightening. What was that? Like, oh, it was awesome. You got a ringer. I'm like, oh my God. So I sat in a lot of shame and contemplation the next day, completely isolated. This is sometimes the healthy expression of shame is it'll bring us to isolation to reflect, am I happy with my behaviors that's impacting the community? And by the grace of God, I felt the healthy shame. And then on day 2 after that experience, something happened that was really mystical. My biological grandmother, for everyone listening, is the one who raised me from when I was separated from my mom to 14 months till she was diagnosed with terminal cancer and had to find a new family for me. And she had what I call good mother energy. It's the same energy I felt from you, Mikki Bey, when you were bringing in the compassion for, hey, if you have some sort of addiction, there's a reason. That's gives me chills. That's good mother energy. And my grandmother had it. She fought for my life. She wouldn't let me go in the system. She chose a family for private adoption so she could stay in my life as a presence until she died. She was our babysitter until I was 5 is when she actually ended up dying. And that mother energy, it was so painful losing it at 5, devastating. And I didn't realize how devastating it was to lose it. But once I faced the depth of my own darkness and the shadows driving the bus of my life, control, domination, she came in just to my awareness. And I remember feeling all this shame. And I heard this whisper. I wasn't a spiritual guy, but I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't on crack. I had these whispers of, oh, sweet one, this is not who you are. What are you doing? And I bawled. And I let myself feel it. And I could just feel this warmth soothing this pain around my heart. And me remembering, yeah, this isn't who I am. I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do here. And then something really quickly came in after touching that vulnerability of my own lived experience. And then all of a sudden, these whispers of my heart is what I call it, intuition. It whispers of my heart started to show me just steps to take. Left the drug industry, stopped doing drugs, stopped smoking pot, stopped smoking cigarettes, picked up a book, my first book I'd ever read in my life. And I was 19 at the time. And it was Dan Millman's The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And I started to read, and all of a sudden I started to feel better. I started to have boundaries with toxic people in my life. My intuition just said no to all of this and just go in the vulnerability of a new direction. And I just took the steps. And once I started to take the steps, I started to feel better. And that feeling better put me on a new path. It put me on a new trajectory that was humbling because it was vulnerable. I had to face limitations. I had to look at my insecurities. And I didn't have the full picture, but it was better than where I was.
Yeah.
It was better than where I was. And so that was the reckoning one.
Mm-hmm. There's another one after that. That was
Was
all
it-
one experience.
That's just one.
Okay.
And
What was the second one?
so I learned a lot on that one, and I still didn't have the full toolkit of being a mature man. I didn't even know what mature masculinity was. The world that I lived, I was just around men that I would say are little boys in men's bodies. The regular way of relating was shaming each other. You're a pussy. Oh, you're such a fag. Anytime vulnerability would be expressed, it would be attacked because I believe there's just so much fear of intimacy. So many places mom or dad couldn't hold the good mother, good father energy. society couldn't. So all these coping strategies, and that's who I regularly was around. I used to be a trades guy. And so I would based in that, it made it hard to open my heart. I was wanting to open my heart, but I couldn't do it because I would try to and then be shamed. Fuck. Then I tried again, shamed. Oh my goodness. Then I started to move towards personal development. I found Tony Robbins. I read the book Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I started to see a life that's possible that I had never even thought of before. Rich Dad Poor Dad was actually the one that broke me into, I want to be an entrepreneur. This sounds amazing. Oh my God. So I started moving the direction, but it was hard because I was still surrounded by the people that didn't want to see me win. Not consciously, just they weren't living their most aligned life. So the analogy that I describe here is crabs in a bucket. Anyone who lives on the coast and has gone crab fishing knows if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, one will try to get out by standing on the others, and it'll grab its claws and it'll hook on the edge and it'll start pulling itself out, and the other crabs will grab it and pull it back down into the fucking bucket. And I think that's our unconscious primal nature. If we're not conscious, if we're not intentionally building a relationship with our heart, listening to those inner whispers, we will unconsciously do that. That's the animal part of us. So I lived this for many years. And so I isolated a lot, and I found a beautiful partner, and I decided I'm going to do the long-term commitment thing. I'm going to do the American dream. So I just worked my ass off. I just like sleep when you're dead, grind, push and learn and absorb books and so much information, but I wasn't really transforming. I had the beautiful wife. I had the huge paycheck. I had the theater room in my basement. I had the brand new truck paid off in the driveway. I had a jet boat, every reason to feel like a king. And I was so empty inside. And I was in this marriage for 7 years, getting weaker and weaker in it. And I couldn't figure out why. And so I just went back to soothing strategies from old, what I call DML days. That was the drug dealing days. And then I brought weed back in, and I started soothing with weed. And I brought porn back in just to try to feel better. And then eventually my life walked in one day and said, I'm done. Reckoning 2.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Chase the American dream, feel empty inside, trying to just get more status and money and control to hopefully feel the experience that I'm lovable. And it wasn't working. And she just decided to leave. I walked in. I couldn't numb out. Even all the things I was using to numb out, Netflix specials, weed, wasn't working in that moment. Because I said, what? I had no idea it was even coming. She's like, I'm done. Done with what? Done with this marriage. Oh my God. I got up. I walked in. I wasn't choosing this. My body started to shake. I walked into the kitchen. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, and I fell into the fetal position, and I was scream crying, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And then all of a sudden my perspective shifted, and I could almost see myself on the kitchen floor. And all of a sudden I had this insight. Holy shit. I'm a baby. This is day 1 of my life.
Yeah.
I just recreated my deepest fear of my entire life, and my projection of my mom, my partner. My little boy was driving the bus. I didn't know that. And I made her my mom. Not appropriate for
No
adult
choice but
relationship. Had
yeah,
no
it had
voice
no
to play
choice.
out. I was
Yep.
a little boy in a relationship, but I wasn't maturing, and that's not sexy. That's not attractive. It's not what creates a long-term
No.
relationship. I didn't know, though. I had no idea. I was so numb. In my nervous system, I was numb. So anyone listening, the reason I didn't know is I was numb. I was dissociated. I was soothing. I was using addiction. This is why addiction is dangerous. It numbs out the actual feedback from life, the report card of my partner's not happy. Let's
Yeah.
get help.
Let's dig in a little bit there, because I was actually going to bring you back to something you said about the drug dealer days and the women in those days. You started off that story by saying even when you were in those moments, you were able to attract awesome women, right? And women that you really just couldn't hold for where you were in that space. So there were casualties along the way, right? And then you get to this marriage and bring all of that in with you and don't even recognize that your wife is clearly going with her needs unmet in this marriage to the point where she's just to my breaking point and I have to go. What do you, as you look back at that now and you look at the through lines between those relationships and that marriage ending, what do you see besides the pattern with which we just talked about, you recreating the pattern? Is there anything else that you can extract from the through line of those casualties of all those women that would help women to understand when they're dealing with a little boy versus a man?
I had a complete unawareness that there was a little boy inside of me.
Oh, that is so good.
No idea.
Okay, that is interesting to me. And I think that is interesting. And I take it that this is at least a decade or so ago. So I can account that it wasn't in our lexicon the way that it is now when we're talking about inner child work and that kind of thing. And then now we're in the industry, so we hear it all the time. But I think that there is a colloquial understanding of having an out, at least with women. And do you think men are not also getting that signaling today? They are unaware that they have a little boy inside that may be, as you said, driving the bus, maybe driving their bus in their lives.
I'd say most men that I've worked with, there's so many protectors online. This is what's called protectors. Our brain, when there's extreme vulnerabilities inside that we haven't integrated or haven't been loved and resolved and grown up inside, our brain will create protectors, which ends up in gaslighting, defensiveness, shutting down, withdrawing, avoiding hard conversations, building up stories that my partner's crazy. God, she's so out of control. It's all about her. Men are mostly unconsciously just letting the inner narratives protect them from feeling the vulnerability they don't even have contact with. Then all this performance happens because, as a preference, friction feels good for men. We got dicks.
Oh, that is so good.
We
Mike,
got,
no, stay there.
yeah,
Stay
yeah,
there. Okay, friction feels good for men because it's familiar to them, or what is the reason that friction feels good? So even if you're in a relationship with me and we are at odds, that feels better to you than just being vulnerable. Am I hearing that correctly?
yeah, because it's alive. It's primal. Like when you think of the conflict part, we think of what we're biologically built for, which is to provide and protect. Protection means fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So what go ahead.
there's a part that's satiating to be in, that's better than feeling the part of them that inside is actually frozen and collapsed.
So then what are women supposed to do with that? Because that sounds to me as I listen with like my not my coaching hat, but just as my 40-plus-year-old woman who's had some experience under my belt and looking back and thinking about all the experiences that I've had with men, hearing that information feels daunting to me because it feels like yet another time where now it's going to be my responsibility to usher him into understanding that there's some healing that needs to take place so that we can have a healthy relationship. And I don't necessarily want to do that, right? I want to be in a relationship with a healthy, grown man. I don't want to be in a relationship with a little boy who would rather fight me than love me. Because while you all are solving for the primal nature of friction and protecting, we're solving for security and safety. And so it feels inherently unsafe to me to be in friction with a man. That just, that, how do we reconcile that?
First of all, be humbled by the places where the little girl could be driving the bus. Because, and I'm going to use the 3 levels of relational consciousness here to help orient this. There's me consciousness, you me consciousness, and we consciousness. And we all have it. We all have each 3 phases, and we evolve through them, and it's a journey. There's no right or wrong, bad, but there's a responsibility to recognize and discern when we're in one of those phases of consciousness. What happens for most women that I've worked with there is a part where the little girl is in there righteous and infuriated for where the little boy is alive in the relationship without a lot of compassion, that men are actually more sensitive than women.
Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
You just I felt that so deeply because I think it's so easy to forget.
Yeah.
Because if you are someone like me, who I'm an habitual uh, dater of men in their alpha energy, right? Who are in that protector mode. And immediately when you said that, I was like, oh, damn, he's right. We it's so easy to forget because of how we can view the men in our lives, and we do think they are larger in life than life in some respects, and we want them to be our Superman, and we want them to feel strong and capable. And I can see how forgetting that they are sensitive and deserve and need compassion as well would aid in what you mentioned earlier, which is here I am showing vulnerability and I'm being shamed for it, so let me not show this piece of myself, which then is just this eternal loop that we continue to be in as partners.
Yeah, chills. And thank you for your willingness to feel that truth and
Mm,
where it lands, because that's the way out. The second we can come out of you, me consciousness, if you weren't the little boy, and we have to also then go, if we're projecting that out, there's often the inquiry of where am I projecting out? Where are my little girls here? And my little girl doesn't want to do this part of adult relationship. I shouldn't have to do this. Guess what?
Guilty,
Yeah. Yeah. Great job.
guilty.
That's the growing up right there. And this is true of all of us, no matter gender. If we're in the game, if we want a thriving relationship, we have to be in the game of ownership always.
100%. Yeah.
Accountability for the use of our power in the places we don't want to do the hard thing. A thriving relationship means doing a lot of hard things over and wanting to be allies in service to creating safety for each other, to heal the unresolved material that is living in our bones.
Mike, as you are talking, first of all, I 100% agree with everything you're saying. Number one. Number two, I am not even in my coach hat sitting here. I am literally just, let me remember how this is truly in a relationship with a man, and just being, I would say, just a little bit upset, not even a little bit, let's call resentful, upset, angry that the emotional load has been largely on my side of the fence, or how I have felt. And I'm speaking for myself. If women, if this don't apply to you, that's fine. I'm speaking for Mikki Bey, where the emotional load has been heavier on my end. So I was perceiving it anyway. And where that leads to resentment and anger in the relationship and the breakdown, but I'm not attributing it to where my lack of being able to see that the little girl is present and asking, which ironically, I happen to have an AI picture of myself on my literally on my desk to remind me of this. And
Yeah.
it's Mike, I'm just having this moment of like, as coaches, we know a lot of information, right? We have tons and tons and tons of information, and we consume a lot of information to be ready to help those who are coming to us. And there is something so sacred about that, that we are obsessed with this work. But then
Yes.
there's a piece of it, and you're reminding me of that piece right now, which I teach embodiment, right? But in my own relationships, where I have long said I am probably most deficient in interpersonal relationships with men. And I think you have just pinpointed it in real time. Why? And that's why I'm just like, oh, I got to take this hat off and put this regular hat on. Because when I think of the issues and the conflicts, that I was married for almost 10 years, this sums it up right here. that my little girl was like, you're not giving me what I wanted, what I need, and I'm taking on too much. Never stopping to offer compassion, understanding, a way forward that isn't ego based to my partner, and just seeing him for also the hurt boy that he was in that relationship as well. So just having a true aha moment as you are talking. My question though is,
Can I speak to that quickly?
yeah, sure.
Because this is such an important piece. And I'm curious to hear from you on this one. But what I've watched is the pattern over and over is a woman like yourself in that place of, oh, really upset, really hurt and pissed about where the masculine hasn't showed up. The place where you haven't been met in that place. Sometimes what defaults is a sequence that happens too quickly, which just as your description, there's something that happened. And then, there's also something that's happening, which is the bringing in the compassion for him and where he's at. But there's a place that has to happen before it often. And that is someone in the masculine role. And I'll offer that now. You have been holding the emotional labor for all these years. I don't know you that well, but I can feel it in you. That actually happened. A lack of reciprocity, a showing up, a tracting the experiences to try to do the work, to want to have the relationship. For most women, there is a lack of being seen in the invisibility of where being a woman with a womb, the biological role is to be tracking the relational space 24/7. That's how you're built. And a lack of appreciation for it. Worse, criticized, minimized, shamed for that part tracking the relational space. Yes, sometimes it's coming from the little girl, so it's shaming and critical. But still, there's a wisdom in holding all of that emotional labor. So I'm so sorry for all the places you have been doing the emotional labor with not a lot coming back. That actually happened. That first, being seen and seeing if you can let that in and let it land.
Oh, it's landing. I'm tracking with you, Mike. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
and then from that place, oh yeah. Now you get to bring in the fierce feminine that men need, especially men who are in avoidance. I was just working with a couple yesterday, and often the coaching that I bring and the men that I work with is, buddy, if you're in avoidance, you are ruling the relationship and it will destroy it. You need to grow up here and practice moving towards and reassuring, finding the reverence in the feminine and what she's offering. And if you don't be in that practice, you'll lose her.
And see, we want that. I'll speak for myself again. I want you to come like that. How do I find the men that can come like that and just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna be in this with her. I'm gonna give her the reassurance that she needs. And where are those men? Where are they, Mike?
Yeah, they're my initiated man online men's group.
We find them. Can we? You guys
Yeah.
got a picture?
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I'll
love
send you. It'll be one of my offers. I'll send the
There you
contacts
go.
for all the men in my initiated man program.
I love
So,
it.
but in reality, there's two things here. The most common thing that I hear from women, I have a lot of women that follow me, and there's a common question of how do I get him to do the work so that he can meet me in this way? Common, so common. I've been doing the work. I've been doing the work. He's not doing the work. Yeah. I can tell you just already how you're describing it. Yes, that's a real thing. But the energy I'm already feeling about him not doing the work, there's a one-up position here. There's a grandiosity. There's the I'm doing the work and he's not. Yeah, partly true, but the energy that you're holding is what he's feeling.
Say that. You're so right.
And again, men are more sensitive than they even are aware of. They're so sensitive, they're numbing themselves out to not have to feel the sensitive.
Yes.
And women, you got a lot of power. And thank goodness for all you women doing the work to learn how to tame the wild woman in there not to repress her, but to tame her in a way that's pro-relationship, which means when you're relating with a man, knowing it's your biological role relationally to initiate him into wanting to stand up and forward in your delivery.
Now say more about that.
If you want a man to do more work, often it's getting curious of how am I delivering the message? Is it coming from the juicy feminine and the desire and the longing to feel him in his power and potential that you see, or have you lost sight of it?
Okay. All right, Mike. I got a question right there. Here's my question. Because when I hear that, and I'm trying to listen from a large lens, not just my own lens, but when I hear that, that again still sounds like so much work, right? Where you got to say it just right. You got to say it with a feminine communication. And listen, I don't have, a lot of that sounds well and good, but it still feels a little lopsided. And the messaging that's coming across to women who have carried the emotional load primarily in relationships is now coming to a conversation about how do you decenter men, right? Entirely, because the the juice has not been worth the squeeze. I could say it just perfectly. I could be in my most feminine and still am not met with that reciprocity. So how do you account for that for having just a healthy relationship? Because women, I'm gonna tell you, we tired. We didn't tried to say it all the ways. And it's I can tell you what I'm actually seeing. I'm seeing a lot of people opting out of partnership, whether that is marriage or whether they're just saying, I'm done with this marriage. I'm talking about 15, 20, 30-year marriages. I'm done. I'm not getting anything that I need. I'm out. I can do this on my own. I'm also seeing women who are single saying, I just prefer to be single because it is too much taken from me for me not getting back what I need and want from men. So, how do we make this so that it doesn't feel like, again, everything is coming down to the woman? I got to tell him he need Mike. I have to initiate him into doing more. Why? I thought the male was supposed to lead and we reciprocate.
This is you, me consciousness to a T.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the second level of consciousness, and it's not wrong.
Mhm.
There's a reality in it. You are doing a lot of the emotional labor, and there is yet another thing. And that's going to be frustrating if you don't know how to deliver it in a way that's actually going to lead to a different outcome.
Okay, so then what's the next level then? Because most of us, I think, are stuck at that.
Yeah.
You, me.
You're describing right now the very terrain. I used to be a trades guy. That's what I used to do. And I was doing all this work to become a coach. And where my coaching career blew up is when I just attached myself to the niche of I'm going to help women heal their relationship to the masculine.
Mhm.
A lot of women actually need to experience the sensation of presence from a man who's been doing his work to heal her inner relationship with the masculine, to soften all the unconscious edges that are terrifying for her partner. Often she just needs to be held in the little girl part to have it resolved, to have it work out, to have it like, ugh, this is what it feels like to be met. And if there's a woman who's in relationship, the encouragement would be getting the relationship supported. So as an example, Courtney and I, my partner and I, we support couples 2 to 2. Our relationship supports their relationship. A lot of people, a lot of couples, a lot of women will get into the place of tired, exhausted. Oh my God, he is a little boy. He's just doing this. He shows up. He doesn't want to take responsibility and so infuriated that they've lost touch with the amount of fury that's in the field, even when a woman thinks, I'm in my feminine. I'm telling you, we're looking at you. I'm a bit terrified. And so you may think you're delivering it all just right. It's not how a man receives it. Because women are numb too. It's easy to put the blame on the men who are numbing in, little boy, but there's a place where women are more skilled in the places of numb because they
Sure.
got the words to say. They're often a little more anxious and they're wanting the connection. They're fighting for the connection. And often the man is avoidant and is convinced it's better off just not relating with this. She's too much. Woman's deepest fear and wounding. I'm too much. Man, I'm not enough.
Ah,
When
that's it right there.
When those two
Right there.
wounds hit, it's creating relational ingredients that make it hard for both people to feel safe and sink in. Intimacy isn't just some feeling. In an adult perspective, when I say intimacy, I'm talking about two people creating safety for each other.
Yes.
When you're in that relationship of wanting to be in each other's care, now you are creating and offering over. Yep, you said it. It's hard work. It is hard work. But it might not be the right work that's the hard work. A lot of women are just doing the hard work, but they're actually mothering their partner and not realizing it. They're shaming and criticizing, don't realize it. There's all these places they don't understand how it's actually being received on the other side because they haven't offered over the amount of space for him to open his heart to share what's actually in there.
100%. I raise my hand to that. Yes, I agree with you. And I think it is a necessary reckoning, right? That I'm having in this moment and just thinking about. It's easy for me to say, I've never had this from a man, but I don't think I really have consciously stepped back and said, did I consciously go in and say, let me create safety for him and I'm always concerned about my safety, right? But am I even thinking about his safety? The honest answer to that is no. And that is, call it whatever you want. It just is the truth, right? When I think about the relationships that I've had, I don't think that I was consciously focused on the man's safety. I think I was focused on not hurting him intentionally, which is safety.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I've ever said to myself consciously, I need to create a safe environment for him to be vulnerable. I expect vulnerability. And I think that is yeah, I expect because I am vulnerable that he will be vulnerable. And then when I'm not met with the vulnerability, it feels to me as if he is purposefully withholding, right? He's doing something to me, which of course with my coach hat on, I can see that differently and I can coach myself out of that. But just from the woman perspective, right? In the relationship, it feels, why will he not give me his vulnerability, something that I can give very freely, not really still thinking, I'm not dealing with one of my other girlfriends. This is my man over here. He's different than I am. So, Mike, how do we go if, let's say, we don't have all of these tools, right? Because at some point you had to learn how to do this. Courtney had to learn how to do this, right? What is just a good jumping off spot if you're never going to meet a Mikki Bey, you're never going to meet a Mike Elliott? What can I do to try to have the healthiest, happiest relationship? And this applies to all relationships, but for the sake of the conversation, let's just say male, female, or the feminine and masculine energies balance in a relationship.
First of all, doing the beautiful thing that you modeled and having the humility of accepting the places where what's being contributed to the relationship is maybe not the most ideal, not the most safe. Taking the ownership first. Second would be, don't accept whatever sticky notes you've plastered on men or your partner or women of the judgment of they are this. The second we are in some righteous thinking of men are this or they are that, they aren't doing the work, and you're now in grandiosity. It feels good to be grandiose. That's a survival strategy of our attachment system. I describe it when my partner's in it. I'm like, oh, there you are on your big white horse.
Yes.
And then usually I'm on my big white horse projecting, you're on your big. That's the grandiose part that tries to protect us, the you me consciousness. But we consciousness, this is the ideal aim, is taking in the bigger perspective. Wow, we are having a hard time relating. We are having a hard time of taking responsibility for impact on each other. We're having a hard time creating safety to feel connected. Wow, I can really feel we have a lot of ruptures that have happened, just conflicts that haven't repaired. The next step would be, who is living a life where they are in a thriving relationship? Find them. If they do work in the world, study them, investigate them to see if they walk their talk, and move towards their offerings and invest in yourself and do whatever you have to bring the relationship into the experience of having the tools of doing adult relationship. Corey and I had to do that, and us receiving it, being supported by someone living sacred relationship. And for anyone listening, the definition, it can sound woo-woo, using the medium of the relationship for our own awakening.
Say it again, Mike. Say it again.
Using the medium of the relationship for our own awakening.
Yes.
Gabor Mate talks about it. We attract to the level of dysfunction that lives in our body. So let's fucking grow up and take ownership that we are attracting people that are mirroring the places we haven't matured. Let's own that. Stop fighting about it, making it about them, because you're hurting yourself. Just get now curious of, what do we need to grow up here? What do we need to be supported through this place? We're so becoming the victim and making it about them. We obviously can't do it. Let's get help and have someone who's done it, who is doing it, who's in the practice of it, because sacred relationships are practice. And then being held by that. Good mother, good father energy. Somebody who's not living it can't support us in it. This is a bold perspective Courtney and I speak to, and we warn people. If you are having a hard time in your relationship, please find someone who is living sacred relationship to support your relationship. You can go get all different layers of support, but if they're not in the practice of it, and there's anomalies, there's people that can hold both, but our experience is we will unconsciously project our experience onto people.
Correct.
And so I want a couple living sacred relationship to project all over me if I'm living a reality of separation and distance and blame. Call me out. Because a person who isn't in sacred relationship is going to lack the capacity to call that shit out. Correct. They'll be like, yeah. And this is where a lot of couples end up separating, where it probably could have worked, is they'll go and they'll sit with their therapist, and their therapist will sit there and placate them. They'll just, and they'll pathologize. Your partner is, he sounds like an ass. If we're listening to the traumatized little part of someone expressing their belief of the partner, guess what? The partner, if they're not living it, they won't know how to hold on. There's their little girl. Wow, she's really made a story about the partner. She won't be able to, or they won't be able to advocate for the relationship. And then so what happens is people are going and doing the work, and women are getting all of their stories from their pain wounded place validated. Yeah, fuck him. And then what happens, I've been on a few podcasts where 100% of the audience is boss babes, and they have vowed. Hey. And nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. It's an experience of life. Nothing wrong, not shaming. But the sadness in my heart is where women are getting to the place so hurt and protected that they vow, fuck man, I will never be in a relationship with another man again. I've worked with a lot of these women, and then, let's just see, maybe, but let's just bring you support and watch what happens. And every time, 100% success rate so far, they attract someone who is emotionally available, who's been doing the work, because they gave themselves the experience of receiving it. Guess what? Now the woo-woo part. Your energy, your frequency has changed. Your belief system has transformed. Now you're attracting to that level of maturity. Now you're no longer a victim. You've boundaried the story that's not helpful. And now you're attracting in the love that you deserve because you've gone and received it.
Mike, I was not planning to go to church today, but you done took us to church. You took us to church. I could talk to you for 5 more hours because we really have not even scratched the surface. So much could be said about that. And it's interesting because obviously, actually, you are probably the person on the other side of this podcast is boss babe, right? Just if they're part of my tribe, they probably are. But what I know to be true for those boss babes is that I would say a good 95. I'm being very liberal with this 95. It's probably closer to 99% of these women would rather not be
Yeah.
boss babes. But and myself included, where I recently just started dating someone new and I started telling him I'm a fairy. Do not look at me as a boss babe at all. Don't even, I don't want to talk about work. I don't want to talk about what I do. I'm mad that he even found my socials because I don't want him to know nothing about Mikki Bey in that way because there is trauma there, right? There's trauma with being seen as a very capable woman. And because when I show up in my full self and I show up as a business owner and a mom, and I can handle my own and I can do my own and I can get my own, and I still want to be held and I still want protection and provision, it feels horrible to not get it from the man that I want it from. Right. And so I have to speak for the women who have had that experience and just say like that to your point, that experience is valid. And the and to that is not necessarily, and I need to opt out. The and of it is, and what I coach is first us taking responsibility for the experience that we are creating, what you're speaking to, right? We are creating a particular experience, not of our fault of our own. It is our nervous system. It is what we are programmed for. We have lived it. We have experienced it. So your brain says, ah, this is dangerous. Don't go in here thinking you about to be protected and provided for, girly. You know, that's your job. So then there's energetic edge out, which you have been talking about so beautifully and brilliantly in this conversation. And so I really just want to put a bow on things as we are wrapping up. First of all, thank you for your brilliance. With the work that you do is powerful. Thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing how you got into this space. And I am going to really encourage people to watch this entire podcast because so much, like, you dropped so much in this podcast and we did not even scratch the surface of what I know that you can talk about because we've talked about it 3 times at this point. But I really want people to digest what you're saying because I was not at all faking ahas. This was true in the moment. I feel you on what you're saying and it resonates for me. And if it resonates for me, I know there are a lot of people on the other side of this screen or on these phones who need to hear and understand the work that you do. So to put a bow on everything, Mike, tell everybody in the ways in which you can help them if they so choose to reach out to you and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, Mikki Bey, thank you. It's such an enjoyable conversation, just feeling you. And thank you, your mastery in facilitating such a rich conversation for your audience. It's really great. And everyone listening, you're being held so well by Mikki Bey. That gives me chills. What a gift. And thank you to all the, sounds like a lot of women in your audience doing the work. Thank you for showing up and learning and being curious. And I hope I poked and provoked places for you to have ahas. And I don't normally do this, but I'm just feeling this in this moment. If there's a woman out there and you're in that boss babe position, but you do know deep down somewhere you want love, reach out, shoot me a message. I'll give you my links, email me, let me know what hit. And I haven't done this in a long time, but I'm willing to open up. I work in 6-month containers and I'd love to give you the experience to work through those places so you can attract the love that you really crave. And so if that's of interest of you, just email me. It's transform@itsmikeelliott.com. Elliott is 2 T's in it, Elliott. Just shoot me an email, let me know. And give yourself the experience of safety.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I hope there are some women that take you up on that too, because I love what you said about a lot of us just have not even experienced it to know what we're even asking for or looking for. And you can hold that space and be a model and a guide to that. So thank you for that. And then what about for our men listening?
Yeah, for the men listening, there's 2 places I could send you, but I just wanna share the one of my lowest entry offers. It's called The Initiated Man. It's only $97 a month. You can leave whenever you want. It's really low risk, but it's where we go into doing the work to become the man. It's this environment of men who want more money, meaning, and maturity. And if that's you, and I'll give you the link to that. And we just started a month and a half ago. And so we're fresh into it. And the men who are in there, you'll be surrounded by men doing the work, bringing the vulnerability, practicing it. And you can shut your screen off if it feels too edgy to go surround yourself with men doing the work so you can be what Mikki Bey described earlier of like, where are those men? Become the men. Think of the status and the satisfaction of women mirroring back, fuck, he's present. Wow, he provides for
Yes.
me. If you want that, show up to the Initiated Man.
That was so perfect, Mike. Thank you. I am so grateful to you for this conversation. It was so candid and raw. And I would love to have you back on Trigger Proof again to continue this conversation. I told y'all that this conversation was going to be so insightful and just packed full of knowledge. And so if this touched you in any way, please leave a comment for us. Send Mike an email if you'd like to work with him. Men, get into the Initiated Man program. And thank you so much to all of my listeners and viewers. We'll see you next time on Trigger Proof. Thanks for joining me on Trigger Proof with Mikki Bey. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're really ready to dive deeper, download my free emotional regulation bundle. It includes my ebook, workbook, and a masterclass to help you start regulating with confidence. Find the link in the show notes. And until next time, stay steady, stay grounded, and stay trigger proof.